Hello, hello,
Hello, hello, hello, hello, hello, hello, hello, hello, hello, hello, hello, hello.
Hello, are we audible? Guys at the back, please come to the first row. Please. Guests will be here anytime soon. Please, guys. Hello, are we audible?
roots to the vibrant state of Rajasthan, the home to Bits Pilani. Akin to the group's founder, Rahul began his entrepreneurial journey by setting up the institutional equities broking business at Nirmal Bang from scratch at the mere age of 30, one of the youngest ever to hold this position in this industry. And in a short span of just 14 years today, he has led it to become one of the top broking players in the industry. Rahul's extensive experience provides him an insightful overview into the trends of the Indian equity markets, as he is frequently invited to share his views on the same with business news channels and at industry conferences. He is also well known amongst the C-suite of top Nifty companies for insightful analysis into company fundamentals and valuations. Prior to Nirmal Bang, Rahul was a key face for CNBC, TV18, and Bloomberg UTV as analyst, anchor, markets editor for their prime time shows and channel respectively. In fact, he is the youngest ever markets editor of a business news channel in India. He also has a vast experience in corporate finance with PwC, investment banking with UBS, and started his career with Citi in wealth post his graduation. Now, a little something about Ms. Ritu Poddar. Ms. Ritu Poddar serves as the head of product and mutual fund research at Nirmal Bang Niveshalaya. With an academic background in mathematics and an MBA in finance, she brings nearly 2 decades of extensive experience in mutual fund industry research. Since the beginning of her career, Ritu has witnessed and contributed to the remarkable growth of the Indian mutual fund industry, which has expanded from rupees 4 lakh crores to over 65 lakh crore rupees today. Ritu's deep understanding of the industry trends and her robust connections with key mutual fund players enable her to provide valuable insights and analysis. She has also been instrumental in developing cross-selling systems for mutual funds at Nirmal Bang, as well as expanding the firm's offering to include a range of wealth-creating products such as portfolio management services, alternative investment funds, real estate funds, and wealth protection products like secondary market bonds and corporate fixed deposits. In addition to her professional achievements, Ritu has also made significant contributions as a volunteer, raising funds for Nirmal Bang Securities through listed debentures. Her contributions reflect her unwavering commitment to both the mutual fund industry and the portfolios of her clients, consistently striving to deliver value and foster growth in every aspect of her work. Please join me and applaud the two speakers that we have here today.
Thank you. Is this audible? So thank you for the very kind introduction, and thank you for having Ritu and me over here. I can assure you, basis that introduction, neither Ritu or I are that old. So we just started early, but we're still very young, and I think both of us would admit that we're only halfway through our careers, and there's a long, long way to go in terms of what's to be accomplished and where both of us and the company as a whole needs to go. So once again, thank you all for taking time out to being here on a Saturday morning. And apologies for being late. I am the reason. So sorry to keep you waiting. So I think we can keep this fairly freewheeling. I don't think there was a specific topic that was given. Before I start, I just want to know, I am given to understand that broadly the age group is between 25 to 27, 28. So I just, by a show of hands, how many people are already directly or indirectly invested in the stock markets? It will be interesting. Okay, Ritu is obviously very happy. Mutual fund money. Out of these, how many are directly invested? Okay, lovely. So now I am trying to wonder how I should start and what I should talk to you about. Do you want to keep this conversational, or do you want me to talk a little bit about how I got here, what we do, or do you want to straight away throw questions? I'm okay any which ways. How would you like to take this? Okay, sure. So as the intro started, I'm basically born and brought up in Mumbai. I am sort of half Punjabi, half Sardar. The family basically came in from what is now known as Pakistan, because the Indian part of Punjab was always more agricultural. The Pakistan part of Punjab was always the more industrial. So you will find a lot of people who come from the north that say that they came from what is now across the border. They were predominantly from industrial families. So some of you may have heard this stand-up by Amit Tandon where he says, everyone that comes from the north says Pakistan mein hamari badi zameenein thi. And he say itni zameen hai nahi Pakistan mein agar aap add kar do. But I think Punjabis are by and large very light-hearted people. So the journey, obviously, the family came from there. My father was in business. He was actually the largest manufacturer of parachute oil bottles from Marico. You know those blue bottles of parachute oil? So my father was the largest manufacturer of Marico from there. My mother's been a teacher for 50 years. She has just retired. She's had a very, distinguished career from having taught the junior Ambani's kids to Naika's kids. Basically, these are all her students, and there's been plenty more Guni Chadda's kids of Deutsch, so on and so forth. So I'm the least celebrated person in my family, and the least accomplished as well, given what my mom and dad have done. I did my schooling in Campion School from Bombay. I did my junior college from Jai Hind. I was a student of science. Thereafter, I went to the US to pursue my undergraduate studies. As I stand before you, I am educationally the least qualified person in this room. I am simply a BA in economics, and I have done no form of postgraduate education. So I was just talking to your seniors, and Mr. Desai was telling me he was associated with ISB for about 5 years. I was actually admitted to ISB in my second year. I remember I was actually asked to come and present on my essay on leadership, which was written on Saurav Ganguly at that point in time. He had just taken over the reins of Indian cricket, and I was, called to talk about it. But unfortunately, that didn't happen because, as was said in the intro, PwC happened. Life will throw you many challenges. My parents worked very hard to send me to America for my undergraduate studies, but there will be things that are not in your control. You have to pick up, run with them, adapt. Why did I bring this up? When I was in the US and I was doing my undergraduate studies, it was a 4-year course. I went in 98, was due to graduate in 2002. But I decided to take summer classes and graduate a little early, save the parents some money and see what could be done basis that. Unfortunately, as most of you would be aware, and you would have heard of the incidents because the anniversary was celebrated recently, 9/11 happened in the year 2001. And that happened just a few months before I was to graduate. H-1B visas were frozen for a very, very long time. It coincided with the dot-com crash that happened globally. So the world went into a very, very deep recession at the turn of this century. Incidentally, it was also the time that our founding member passed away at the turn of the century, Shri Nirmal Bang. But that period was a very turbulent period for the global economy as well as the Indian economy because as some of you, your faculty might remember, there was this talk of Y2K and computers were supposed to stop working at the midnight of 1st of January 2000 and people thought they were not programmed. So obviously there was challenges. I moved to Chicago. I started working with Citi in their wealth management business. It was predominantly a commission-based job. It was wealth. Wealth today is a very, very big business. It is huge. I mean, as some of you are pursuing a career, I would say wealth is probably the biggest thing to look at because, इतना पैसा बन गया लोगों को पता नहीं पैसे के साथ करना क्या है. People have invested in real estate, they've invested in gold, and, they've invested in equities. And, when I meet promoters, so we research almost 200 companies. And my company is just one division of the overall Nirmal Bang group. It's, so we research about 200 companies in my vertical or my company. And when we meet promoters, and you'd be surprised, some of these promoters have market caps of 50,000 crores, 1 lakh crores. They'd be, owning anywhere between 35 to 55% of their company. And these are people who worked on the shop floor, right? They've come up the hard way. Someone's in auto components, someone's done some kind of manufacturing, someone's in textiles, someone's in chemicals, but they don't know how to manage money. They've made the wealth, but they're like, ab kya kare? So I had an opportunity to start my career with Citigroup in wealth. It was a joint venture with Solomon Smith Barney. Some of you may be familiar with Smith Barney's name. But unfortunately, 6 months into that job, I asked my boss, I was like, any clarity on H-1B? And he's like, Rahul, scope to nahi lag raha. So I tried to reach out to Citi in India to see if something would happen. But like I said, it was a very tough time. There was a recession happening here as well. So it was a forced relocation back to India. Luckily for me, I got PwC. In fact, I gave CAT. Now here's a fun fact. In my CAT, in the year 2002 November, I got 92 percentile. When my report card came, I called my friends. I was like, let's go have a beer. IIM से call आ ही रहा होगा, कहीं से नहीं आया. So that's the first time I understood India has a population problem. कि अगर आपको 92 percentile से कहीं से भी फोन नहीं आया. So I was like, अच्छा ये तो प्रॉब्लम हो गई. अब क्या करना है? तो XLRI भी दे दिया, CET भी दे दिया. Very similar problems. I was a very bright student, but not bright enough. वो 92, 94 के बीच में जाके अटक जाता था. And I soon figured out that life begins only post 95. So I said, अच्छा ठीक है, अभी क्या ही करना? कहीं एडमिशन मिल नहीं रही है. Luckily for me, PwC happened. I got, inducted into the corporate finance team there, and then got a lot to learn. Literally, we were working on a lot of sick companies that were going into BIFR, predominantly chemical, and some of the smaller textile and pharmaceutical companies. It was a very tough time for them. Labor union issues and tariffs and things like that. So it was a great learning experience. And from there, UBS happened on the investment banking side. Investment banking is not what you know today. I think every day when you wake up in the morning, you will see a plethora of IPOs, right? Some of you may have allotted. If any of you get the Bajaj allotment, good luck to you. हमें तो नहीं मिलने वाला. Form तो भर के दे दिया, but it was a wasted exercise. But investment banking today is obviously a far, far more lucrative profession than it was when we were, in this profession almost 20 years back. Hardly any companies used to list. Mostly हम लोग government के साथ काम करते थे, FPOs, etc. And when you work with the government of India, regardless of who's in office, you know what your fee is on a public issue typically? Can anyone guess? What is the fee on any issue? It could be a Coal India issue. It could be an ONGC issue. What would a typical investment banker make as a fee? If you just had to hazard a guess, you could be wrong. Anyone want to hazard a guess? You make 1 rupee. The reason you do it is just for the emblem that you have worked for a deal with the government of India. So it's a part of your pitch book. So it makes it look a little more sexy when you go out to the private sector and कि मैंने ONGC का किया है, Coal India का किया है, Oil India का किया है, so on and so forth. So we used to do a lot of PSU work there. Private sector had just started. I remember we had done, I was part of the team that had done the ADR listing for ICICI Bank. We had done the Jet Airways IPO, Haldia FCCB. Some of those things happened. And then CNBC happened for me. It was purely by accident. I was never trained to be a journalist. In fact, I was all at sea. I don't know how many of you want to practice to be in journalism, but don't do it. Okay, media is a dying profession. I can tell you, having come from there, it's all moved digital. It looks very glamorous on the outside. Business media, all of that. Been in the system for worth pursuing, for sure. But that happened, and then as the introduction said, one day I just got a call from Ronnie Screwvala. I thought it was a crank call because I got the call late 2007, and that year, I don't know if any of you remember, but there were movies like Jodha Akbar, Race, Welcome to Sajjanpur, Fashion, a lot of these, A Wednesday, if some of you have seen all these movies. So Ronnie had a great year. And so when my phone rang and I picked up the phone and the lady on the other end said, Ronnie Screwvala wants to speak to you. I mean, anyone, yaar, we were 27 years old, आप क्या समझोगे? Crank call ही है ना, मतलब Ronnie Screwvala आपको क्यों phone करेगा? So I took the call and he said, I'd like to meet you. And when he proposed a meeting at Breach Candy Club in South Bombay, that's when I knew he was serious, because everyone knew Ronnie stayed at Breach Candy Chambers, which is next to Breach Candy Club. Like, chalo, ye se genuine call lag raha. That was a very fascinating meeting because he said, I've been following you for a while. I said, sir, I'm not able to understand. And he showed me a clip which was on his phone at that point in time. And it didn't strike me at that time as to, when I saw the movie, it was really funny. But I didn't realize that this was a connection. So he said, I want to show you something from the movie Fashion. I said, sure. So apparently, I don't know if you've seen the movie. How many of you have seen this movie Fashion, Priyanka Chopra? So the movie opens with a shot on the name Rahul Arora. I don't know how many of you remember. That's how the movie opens. He actually took that name because of me. You never find Rahul Arora is not a name used in movies, right? All these Yashvardhan and this and that, and all the heavy names, So he's like, I've been following you, really liked it. I was like, अच्छा sir, अब समझ में आया, but I have only one question. अरे वो character को आपने movie में gay क्यों बनाया फिर? So that was, so I was 28 when that happened, and he said, please come and be the markets editor. He's like, जब तक आप CNBC में हो, आपकी growth होगी नहीं, because it was too top heavy at that point in time. So sometimes what happens is when you're very qualified also, if you're in an organization that's very top heavy, sometimes it's a little difficult to break. कभी-कभी when you will find this in life, you're way too young today. आप ऊपर देखोगे, आप देखोगे यार साला मेरे ऊपर जो बैठा है वो qualified नहीं है, या मैं इससे better कर सकता हूँ, वो बहुत frustration होगी. मैं गुजर चुका हूँ. Literally. पर वो when Ronnie called and said कि भाई यहाँ से तू नहीं break कर पाएगा. Consider this. I knew when I was moving out of CNBC that it was not going to be a very good decision from the company I was joining, but I thought it would be great for personal improvement. Right. So now understand the distinction. So you could be someone who is working for a very big company and be lost in the crowd, or you could be working in a small company but find it good enough to make a mark for yourself. I took it for the latter reason. I always knew that when we joined, because at that time the Jains had launched ET Now, right? CNBC has always held between 50 to 70% market share. ET Now at its peak was about 15-20%. NDTV Profit existed then. It had shut down. It has relaunched with the Adani takeover now. So they're back on air. But in my mind, I was like, yaar, ye 10-15% market share se kabhi zyada ja hi nahi sakta. But can I use this platform to establish myself? Can it make me into a bigger personality and sort of establish my leadership skills? So I was very lucky that I got my first leadership role at 28. So it was a bit daunting. The team size is 10x of what I'm running here. So I had 500 people reporting to me at the age of 28. Now just imagine how daunting that is. Production, edit, graphics, cameraman, crew, everything comes under you. Not directly. I had HODs. But eventually that decision rested with me and I had to report to Ronnie. So just imagine the pressure that you're sitting on as a 28-year-old. These are things an MBA institute or nothing can teach you. It goes back to a line that I famously like saying and recently I was at NM and I gave this line as well. This movie Hum of Amitabh Bachchan, I don't know how many of you have seen it, but there's this beautiful line where he and his younger brother in the movie Rajnikant are talking. And Rajnikant wants to go out and arrest some of the bad people in the movie. And he says, मैं जाके करता हूँ. And Amitabh says, तुमसे नहीं होगा, क्योंकि तुम्हारी तालीम जो है, वो किताबों से हुई है. मेरी तालीम इनके बीच में रह के हुई है. The point being, what being on the shop floor, what being on ground can teach you, books can't teach you. I'm not saying that you have to study. And one of the first times I felt I should have done an MBA. Was about 4 years back when one of the top 20 market capitalization companies in India approached me to be on their board. And I was very excited. It was literally one of the top 20 companies in India. And it was a huge thing. And he said, Rahul, we need your resume. Ab resume to maine kabhi life mein, I had just made my resume the first time I don't even have a resume. So when I joined PwC, I had, because when I went to UBS, my manager took me there. CNBC also happened by mistake. Ronnie called, and even my current job was not something I applied for. And I'll come to how I landed up here as well. So the point being that, when you're actually in the kind of experience that you gain on the ground is priceless. And that was a very important trade-off I had to take when I started my career. एक हाथ में ISB का offer letter था, एक हाथ में PwC का था. And ISB had tie-ups with, as Mr. Desai would remember, with Kellogg, Wharton, etc. from the start only. So I was like, yaar, agar 3 mahine bhi jaane ko mil gaya, it would be huge. But unfortunately, my dad had got paralyzed around the time. So I said, yaar, abhi 2 saal jaake ya 1 saal jaake invest karna hai kya padhai mein, better get into the workforce and try and understand. So I had a very dear friend of mine, Aftab, at that point, and I consulted him. So he said, Rahul, kar le job. पढ़ाई तो कभी भी देखी जा सकती है, हो जाएगी. अगर ये नहीं मिली, and it was just coming out of the recession, right? So अगर ये छूट गई ना, तो शायद दोबारा ना मिलेगी. Next year जाके आप पढ़ाई दोबारा कर सकते हो. So I think it was one of the best, advices that Aftab had given me, and I, sort of credit him a lot for having taken that decision and sort of landing up here. So I think it's very, very important, both from an education and now the point I was telling you is why an MBA is important or why postgraduate is important. when I made my resume and I sent it and I took a consultant's help to make it because मुझे पता भी नहीं था कि आजकल resume पे photo डालती जाती है. So because I don't look at resumes anymore. The last time I looked at a resume was when I started this company. I have HODs who look at it. Once we want to hire somebody in research or sales, they just ask me to meet that person. They brief me on them. I got rejected because everyone all the other shortlists were IIT, IIM, Stanford, Columbia, whatever. They were like, "Bhai, ye pass nahi hoga." And Deepak Parekh was also on the board of that company. They're like, "Ye to aapka CV pass nahi hoga." So life mein pehli baar laga, yaar, MBA kar lena chahiye tha. So in fact, we are at NBI, we co-sponsored the flagship annual CFA conference. How many of you are either pursuing or plan to pursue a CFA in the near future? Okay, that's very few. I would urge you to consider it. It's something that you can do through correspondence. It is an addition to CA or MBA. Do not do a CFA just standalone. But it is a fantastic platform to network. And the reason I say it is when obviously through your MBA institute and other organizations, you will get a chance to meet people. And so Desai told me some very good companies that anyway coming to your platform. But I think as a supplementary today, as an employer, I look at that +1. So if somebody just has a CA or an MBA, and if I get that CFA along with it, the good part is it's a correspondence course. You can sit and do it at home from your house, but it has great global value. The CFA society across the world is picking up in a very material way. My brother works for Citi in New York. He's spoken to me about the chapter there. Out here, we've had Howard Marks. You would be familiar with Howard Marks. We've had Indira Nui of Pepsi, Nouriel Rubini. They've all come and spoken at our CFA conference. So मेरे को लगा यार हमने तो किया नहीं है, but let's associate with a brand like that. So I would urge you to sort of consider it. So that's how you have to strengthen your CV on paper. Now, how did Nirmal Bang happen? So when UTV was happening and, one day Ronnie just called us to his house and said, "I'm selling out." So we're like, "Sir, khareed kaun raha hai?" Sir, Anil Ambani ne. Chhodna yaar. So incidentally around the time, so we have a very large retail division in our group as well. And when I was the editor of Bloomberg UTV, I used to travel once a month. So they were basically advertisers on my channel. Any of you familiar with the actress Nimrit Kaur? She did this famous movie called Lunchbox with the late Irfan Khan. So Nimrit's first modeling assignment was for Nirmal Bang on their broking this thing. And that ad was launched on my channel. So I used to basically once a month or once in 2 months, we used to pick up a city and I used to go and talk along with a few other people from the market, a Sunil Singhania here or a Madhu Kela or a Niresha. They used to sort of come. And so that's how this conversation just started one fine day. In fact, the promoter family had approached me some time back to help them set it up. So I was actually helping them meet people in the industry to set it up because they were giving me money. So I was like, kar lete hain. क्या ही फर्क पड़ता है. But whoever they met, unfortunately, it didn't work out. And one fine day, somebody from the management asked, "कि आप कर सकते हो क्या?" So it was coincidentally around the same time Ronnie was selling out his business. So I was like, okay. So the same people I was trying to get them to meet, I picked up the phone and started calling all of them. कि करना चाहिए क्या? सबने बोला मत कर, तो मैंने कर लिया. So sometimes you have to have that ideal thought process कि अगर if you go against the herd, right? And इस बात को 14 साल हो गए. So obviously when I had walked in here, I had no idea about this business. When I started Bloomberg UTV, I had no idea. In fact, when we started, it was not called Bloomberg UTV, it was called UTVI. At that time, FDI regulations permitted only 26% holding, so Bloomberg could only come in as a 26% partner. Even when I came here, I still remember, I walked in very similar to the way I'm dressed right now, except the jacket wasn't there. I just walked in with jeans and a t-shirt. And I remember the HR head coming out and saying, "Sir, आप कैसे आए हो?" I was like, "Sir, आप ठंड रखो, मेरे को पता नहीं है मुझे करना क्या है यहाँ पे अभी. मैंने ऑफर लेटर साइन तो कर लिया, ये ड्रेस कोड पे बाद में आएंगे. आप ठंड रखो. वैसे भी इधर कोई एम्प्लॉय है नहीं अभी कंपनी में. अब तो पूरे कंपनी बनानी है." So, literally there were no computers in the division where we sit. There was nothing. We had to place orders for telephone lines. And so the rest of the company had operations. I think some of you may be familiar. There's a very large retail presence. There's a very large commodities presence. So what we do now is actually in any broking firms, it's considered the sexiest piece of the puzzle, right? Because you're dealing directly with institutions and fund managers. And the next logical step of doing what we do is investment banking. So hopefully we will do that because I'm in talks with the promoters. So hopefully we'll sort of do that in time to come. But that's how I landed up here. It was purely by accident. If you look back and ask me, अगर आप यहाँ 14 साल निकाल लिया, आपने सोचा था, नहीं सोचा था. 5 साल का कॉन्ट्रैक्ट था. 5 साल के बाद I remember sitting with my promoter and asking him, sir, do we want to continue this? उन्होंने बोला हाँ. तो we renewed it for another 3 years. 8 साल के बाद we didn't renew it. I remember when we were doing our appraisals in the 10th year, I raised it with my promoter. I was like, do you know we've not renewed my contract? So he looks at me, he's like, छोड़ के जा रहा है क्या? So I was like, sir, छोड़ के तो नहीं जा रहा हूँ, पर आपने भी नहीं पूछा और मैंने भी नहीं पूछा. इसका कोई मतलब है क्या? So, but the point is, we've survived a lot. I think we are the last institutional equity house to set up in India and are very profitable today. Nobody else in India has set up after me and grown their business. There have been a lot of FIs that have come in, the Investex and the Hightongs, but no domestic homegrown institutional broking firm has set up after us. And I think that's something we're extremely proud of as a bunch. And I think it's something that we when we leave office each day, we leave with that pride that we have accomplished something. Even if I was to leave this place today, I know that we have created something of immense value. If you remember when COVID struck, the Nifty was at 12,500 before COVID. It fell down to 7,500. I don't know how many of you invested there. If you all have invested there, you all shouldn't be sitting here. You all should be offering me a job. Okay. So it was a remarkable year, and it was actually the best year for our company on record. In fact, that year, I remember we did a 39% PBIT margin. This is just my company, not the group as a whole. I don't have access to all the financials of the group. But just my company did a 39% PBIT margin, and we closed at a 43% return on capital employed that year. So they say ना आपके मारवाड़ी को पैसा समझ में आता है. तो मैं उस दिन गया, मैंने बोला सर ये लो आपका पैसा, अब ये साइड पे बोनस का अमाउंट है, ये भी साइन कर दो. So but this year obviously has been very good. I think all of you all have seen what's happened to the markets. If any of you all in the Q&A ask me क्या लग रहा है market, I have no bloody idea. यहाँ नहीं होना चाहिए इतना ही पता है, because fundamentally the valuations don't support the market according to me. आप कोई भी metric ले लो, यहाँ पे नहीं होना चाहिए. कहाँ होना चाहिए वो भी नहीं पता, वो देसाई साहब भी आपको नहीं बता पाएंगे, पर इतना पता है कि यहाँ नहीं होना चाहिए. But it's been a remarkable year. They say ना, on a lighter note, they say when you're in Thailand and you're having fun, don't ask why. ठीक है, enjoy yourself. तो हमारा भी यही है कि market is doing good, business is coming, we are not asking why आ रहा है, but we know the music will stop. This cannot continue, right? All of you all had a very respectable show of hands, direct and indirect investments. You all must be following data as well. You all are students. About 20 to 25,000 crores worth of SIP money comes in for the last few months, right? Broadly, अगर आप पिछले 15 महीने का या 18 महीने का देखोगे, 15 से 25,000 का है. Now you have to ask yourself, is this a sustainable number or not? Nobody has an answer today. But what is becoming very disconcerting to me today, I've sort of finished my life's journey till here, okay? I'm just taking it a little into the market's trajectory and more current. What is disconcerting to me, and again, not all of you are old enough to remember, Mr. Desai would remember, there was a time when promoters used to sell stake, the stocks used to get derated. People did not like promoters selling stake. Today, if you see, promoters are selling their own stock at 3, 5, 7, 10% discount. If you just take the last 2 months data, just promoter selling, I am not talking about any proper investment banking mandate like a rights issue or otherwise. Just promoter selling through block sales has been close to 90,000 crores. SIP inflows have not even been half of that. So the point I'm trying to make is the market has shifted away from retail, and it's not retail that's driving the market anymore. It is these promoters who are driving the market. क्योंकि जब आप इतना बेच रहे हो और वो पैसा आ रहा है, we speak to a lot, they are investing that money in lump sum into the markets, or it is going into luxury real estate or high-end cars. This is very disconcerting. It's almost a mindset कि यार मेरे धंधे से पैसा नहीं बन रहा, मैं मार्केट से बना के तो दे दूं. A lot of people are raising money, and I was just asking my analysts to do this. When you look at every IPO, there'll be objects of the issue. आपने देखा होगा क्यों आप कैपिटल क्यों रेज कर रहे हो? कोई प्लांट एंड मशीनरी के लिए कर रहा है, कोई डेट रीपे करने के लिए, कुछ ना कुछ. A lot of companies that have raised capital in the last 1 year haven't really deployed that capital by basis their objects of the issue. तो आपने अगर इशू सब्सक्राइब किया, 1000 करोड़ रेज हो गए, हम तो यहाँ बैठे हैं, हमें क्या पता 1000 करोड़ का क्या हो सकता है वो 50% उसका उसने मार्केट में डाल दिया हो। आप समझ रहे हो? So we don't, so this is something that we have never seen. See, India is growing at about broadly between 6 and 7%, right? Remarkable rate of growth, right? But interest rates are still high. अगर एक कट आ भी गया, एक आध, my own economist who's also my deputy head of research, I keep asking her, she's like, सर 1 से 2 रेट कट आएगा, उससे ज्यादा नहीं आएगा, वो सपोर्ट ही नहीं करेगा. The question is, today, when you all look at companies, I'm sure you all do case studies and all of that. One of the key reasons the market is here where it is today is because earnings have grown remarkably well, right? How have earnings grown? Is purely margin expansion. आपने देखा होगा. You all have all invested. आप लोग balance sheet, P&L, cash flow सब देखते हैं. Purely it has been margin expansion. ठीक है. जहां base बहुत depressed था, वहां top line growth आ गया. अब आपका crude 65-70 के बीच में बैठा हुआ है. 65 से तो कम जाएगा नहीं, मिडिल ईस्ट जाने भी नहीं देगा. 75 से ऊपर वो लोग सप्लाई पंप कर लेंगे. सो ब्रॉडली और बिटवीन 65-75 योर रूपी हैज बिहेव्ड इटसेल्फ. योर एक्सटर्नल सेक्टर इज इन गुड शेप. फॉरेक्स रिजर्व्स आर एट द हाईएस्ट लेवल, nearly $700 billion राइट नाउ. ऑल दैट इज डन. द क्वेश्चन इज यहां से ग्रोथ कैसे आएगा? हिंदुस्तान लीवर 300 रुपए का स्टॉक होता था 2013-14 में. इट वेंट ऑल द वे टू 3000. व्हाट हैपेंड इन दैट जर्नी? 13% margin became 24% margin. Most IT companies today, most chemical are operating at peak margin. So what is going to drive the market from here? Revenue growth. Visibility है? पता नहीं. जब हम कंपनी से बात करते हैं, nobody is talking about structurally more than a 10-12% kind of top line growth, which is what gets me worried. Now, if you ask me realistically, where should the Nifty be today? Honestly, hand on heart, basis. So I asked my team to do this, right? When you value a company, right? आप या तो पी पे करते हो, ईवी एबिटा पे करते हो, या तो आप डीसीएफ करते हो. फेयर इनफ. ब्रॉडली यही 3 मैट्रिक्स हम यूज कर रहे हैं. ठीक है. अब क्या हो रहा है, क्योंकि पैसा इतना आ रहा है, 2 things are happening. Either your valuations, you are taking it into a very absurd level. ठीक है. आप कंपनीज को 30, 35, 40 टाइम ईवी एबिटा दे रहे हो, या फिर वो पी चले गए 50, 55, 60, या फिर वो हम कैपिटल मार्केट्स का ब्रह्मास्त्र बोलते हैं डीसीएफ. ठीक है. अब आप डीसीएफ हर एक सेक्टर में तो नहीं कर सकते ना यार. तो थोड़ी प्रेडिक्टेबिलिटी ऑफ अर्निंग्स, कैश फ्लोज भी कुछ नाम की चीज होती है. The problem is either you're taking the valuations absurd, or then you're valuing the company further and further, right? So we are sitting here in the middle of the year. You should technically be valuing the company at best at FY26. People are valuing it on average of 26, 27. Some people are valuing it on 27. Some people have even gone beyond. I've read some of our multinational competitors' reports that are now valuing companies at the half of 27, 28. भाई ये सब अगर हो रहा है तो आपको समझ में आ रहा है कि मार्केट में कुछ तो गलत हो रहा है. ठीक है. So I was with a CIO of a very large fund very recently, and he said, राहुल पिछले 4 साल में क्या क्या हुआ है? पैंडेमिक हो गया, ठीक है, 2 युद्ध हो गए, ठीक है, दोनों चल रहे हैं, ठीक है, खत्म ही लेगा नाम नहीं ले रहे. जब शुरू हुआ था सबने सोचा 2-3 हफ्ते में खत्म हो जाएगा, बंद ही नहीं हो रहा. क्रूड 100 पे जाके वापस आ गया. US interest rates were at 5.25%. Mortgage rates in the US were at 7%. Money making had become so easy that at a 7% mortgage rate in the US, the home sales were the highest. मतलब हो क्या रहा था? 7% के mortgage rate पे the US home sales were the highest. Isn't that absurd? For an economy that's growing at 2-3%. I understand in absolute value, it's a huge number, even growing at 2-3% at that base. But still, it is remarkable. इंडिया में LTCG बढ़ा दिया, बीजेपी सरकार हार गई. इतना सब कुछ हो गया, लेकिन मार्केट गिरा नहीं, तो अब क्यों गिरेगा? Complacency. Right? If you go back in the last 3 months, you will find each time in the last 3 months, there has been one day where the Nifty has fallen between 1,000 to 1,500 points. Each one day in each of the last 3 months. The last was that famous yen carry trade nonsense. Right? ये दोबारा आएगा. ठीक है. तो अब लोगों को लगता है कि मार्केट टूटेगा नहीं. लोगों को तभी भी लगा था. I don't know if you're aware, but if you haven't seen the movie The Big Short, please watch it. Okay, just keep it for your weekend viewing. Watch it this weekend only. ठीक है. रात को अच्छे से पिज्जा मंगाओ, बियर शेयर मंगाओ, देखो, साथ में देखो, ग्रुप बना के. रिमार्केबल है how the person kept telling them कि ये चीज repackage होके it is. Do you know that the person who blew the whistle on mortgage-backed securities was the day Lehman went bust? His office was packed. It is shown in the movie, and he was asked to be kicked out of his job because his underperformance was almost 80%, because he believed in an idea so much. But within 1 week, his outperformance was 250%. So it will hit you. This market will correct. It is going to go down. The question is, where does it go down to and where does it start from? Okay. Now today at 25,000 Nifty going to 20,000, it's not the same as say a 12,500 going to 7,500. That is far more painful. A 25 going to 20 is not that painful because पैसा इतना already बन चुका है. अगर आपने Indian hotel, let me just give you a case. How many of you own Indian hotels as a stock? किसी ने नहीं उठाया. क्या भाव पे उठाया? ईयर तो डबल तो हो ही गया होगा. ठीक है, तो इसके बाद लंच तुम खिलाओगे. ठीक है, तो इंडियन होटल्स वाज एट 60 rupees when the pandemic hit. ठीक है, most QSR companies, quick service restaurants like McDonald's, etc., like McDonald's had dropped down to 200 rupees. Indian hotels has gone from 60 to 700 rupees in a matter of 3-4 years. Can this continue? You have to ask yourself the question. At 30-35 times EV EBITDA, hota hai kya? Nahi hota. So I would suggest caution. One thing is clear after the finance minister's presentation of the not this budget, not the Feb one, last year's, right? Maybe Ritu will elaborate on this. She made debt not so investable class. There were taxation changes made to debt. अभी आप 6% FD में अगर आपका 30% भी tax आ रहा है, क्या ही करोगे FD में डाल के? Even though she has clarified her stance on real estate after the most recent budget, it's very clear that the government really does not want you to use real estate as an investment class. Bacha kya, gold or equities, right? And as was said in Ritu's intro, forget stock prices or anything like that. There is no industry in the world that has grown. And mind you, I'm including semiconductors in this and Nvidia stock price. Okay. That has grown as the size of the Indian mutual fund industry. The day demon happened, okay, the day demon happened, the industry size was 5 lakh crores. Equity plus debt, 5 lakh crore, watch 65 hai. 13x and industry has grown in 8 years. It is remarkable. Of that, I would say equity could be 50%, maybe even 60%, because now in the last 1 year, it has moved more towards equity. A lot of people are launching hybrid pure equity funds. Ab to sthiti aisi ho gayi hai because see, we meet fund managers day in and day out for a living. That's what I do. They're like, Rahul, fund ke naam samajh mein nahi aa rahe. They're not able to find names to give their funds. You know, supersonic fund, ye dynamic. Matlab, they are literally not able to name the fund. Last week, 9 NFOs were launched. Ye market ke level pe. बजाज की जो लिस्टिंग हो रही है, आप लोगों ने स्टडी किया होगा, आपने अप्लाई किया है, ट्रेलिंग 3.5 times बुक. ट्रेलिंग लिस्टिंग के दिन अगर डबल हो गई तो ट्रेलिंग पे 7 times. क्या पैसा बनेगा? बट फिर भी मैं आपको बोल रहा हूँ यहां से स्टॉक ट्रिपल हो जाएगा. तो लॉजिक नहीं है. लॉजिक लगाना बंद कर दो. आई डोंट नो इफ यू आर अवेयर, बट इन द सेकेंड ईयर ऑफ कोविड, you don't need, I'm not an expert. I don't claim to be one. I claim to have zero understanding of the. If anyone tells you they understand the market, they're the biggest idiots. Nobody understands it, including fund managers. Trust me, I have met with them day in and day out for 14 years. In the second year post the pandemic, the third best performing fund manager in the world. Does anyone know that person's name? The third, the first two were people. The third was a monkey. I'm not joking. They performed this experiment. They made a monkey throw darts in the US. And wherever the dart went, his actual performance was the third best in the world. It was that bloody easy to make money. When it comes down to that, you know there is something wrong. So it's good. Everyone's making money. पैसा बन रहा अच्छा है, पर थोड़ा कभी-कभी logic use करना कि बेचना कब है. It's a very important question. It's not about खरीदना कब है, क्या टिप है, टिप पे तो कभी खरीदना ही मत. टिप एक ही जगह देना, रेस्टोरेंट में या वाले वाले को. बस और कहीं टिप्स मांग. Always ask yourself, when should I sell? We took a very brave call. If you ever see my LinkedIn, I don't post my personal research of my firm on LinkedIn ever. I just don't do it. I you know, there are platforms that people, but we were the first people in India to downgrade the defense sector 2 months ago. and we downgraded it 4 months after initiating coverage on it. We were the last people to initiate on it. पूरी दुनिया ने हमसे पहले कर दिया था. जब हमने किया था ना, मैसगांव का स्टॉक 20 टाइम बढ़ चुका था. 20 टाइम 400 का स्टॉक 8000 हो चुका था. And then we from there also it doubled a lot of defense stocks. तो हमें समझ नहीं आया, तो हमने डाउनग्रेड कर दिया. कुछ 50% बढ़े, कुछ ने बोनस दे दिया, स्टॉक स्प्लिट कर दिया, जो भी है. सो वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू आस्क योरसेल्फ व्हेन टू सेल. बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. डोंट गेट ग्रीडी. ठीक है, कभी कभी लगेगा. I'll give you a classic example. Desai sir again would remember one of the largest strikes that has happened in unionized strikes in independent India's history was the Maruti plant strike that happened in 2011. Do you remember? ठीक है भाई माने सर. The student union chief was burning down cars. प्रॉब्लम क्या थी पता है? They said कि जहां हम खाना खाते हैं ना, वहां से 10 मिनट दूर वॉक करके खाना पड़ता है और 10 मिनट वापस आना पड़ता है. तो कहता है कि हमें 10 मिनट ही खाने को मिलते हैं, आधे घंटे का ब्रेक होता है. कहता है कि 20 मिनट आने जाने में लगते हैं. When we went, and I still had my Bloomberg UTV card. I'm telling you because I went to Manesar. I witnessed it first hand. ठीक है. और उस दिन जो निर्मल बांग को पब्लिसिटी मिली थी, उससे पहले उसके बाद उतनी नहीं मिली है, because ET headlined us because we did a call with the student union leader. ET का headline था, brokerage for the first time ever in India does a call with 700 investors from across the world joined that call. The guy spoke in Hindi. People who we had never heard of, Fidelity Capital, were asking us इसको translate करके हमें भेजो. ठीक है. You never catch the bottom. ठीक है. मैं Desai sir, please forgive me for this थोड़ा non-veg joke, but anyone if ever asks you ना, where is, when talk about stock